this is Doug, and you are on the Flat Earth Workshop. Today we're going to be talking about the USS Arleigh Burke, and this is an amazing destroyer built in the USA, one of the largest. Only the Spruance, Kidd, and Zumwalt classes are larger. It was named after Admiral Arleigh Burke, who helped to found a lot of the principles that are used in today's Navy. So what sets apart the Arleigh Burke class of destroyers? Well, first of all, they have a waterplane area hull, which makes it look a bit different. We'll talk about that later. The Arleigh Burke class also returned to a steel hull from former aluminum hulls of the previous generation for durability, armoring, and cost. The Flight 2A generation of this ship feature a heliport, which helps with observation. The angled vertical surfaces are for stealth purposes. And the Aegis combat system features 360-degree observations all at one time. Today's guest builder is Landon Ritterling with a really tiny model. Hey Landon.
So today we're going to be looking at my Arleigh Burke model. So this is a 1/700 scale kit from Academy. A really astounding kit in general for how big this thing is. It's probably 6 or 7 inches long. And there's quite a lot of detail packed into a small space. So if you don't know about the ship, it's pretty much the mainstay of the modern day US Navy. You see it in pretty much every battle fleet you see around the world, or surface action group, they call them SAGs. And it's really a multi-role vessel. That's why I really like it, because it can do just about everything. So with this model, since it's so tiny, there's a lot of details that go into play. A lot of the parts are, a millimeter in width. For Americans, that's something that's like a quarter of an inch. So looking at the particular model itself, you have tons of different surfaces that you've got to attend to. It's different from armor modeling. Lots of masking that has to be put into place. And for someone like me who hasn't done a ton of masking, this was a big learning experience. One thing that I'd like to do as well when I'm building a model in general is add some weight to it. Oftentimes when you have these plastic models, they feel like a feather, and for some reason, with our tactile nature, that doesn't feel like very much in the hand. So I try to add some weight. And oftentimes, the standard go-to way of doing this is adding lead shot or something of the like. But really, the most cost-effective way of doing it is using pennies, which I guess is technically illegal. But you just glue them in with some super glue, some CA glue, cyanoacrylate, and you're good to go. They're tiny, they're thin, you can put them in anywhere. And after putting a few in, you've got something that actually weighs like it, has some heft to it. So that really adds something to the model when you pick it up. So the first thing we can look at is the bow of the vessel. So there's lots of details that go into play. One thing that you might notice about the bottom of the bow is that it has a very unusual bulbous shape, and that's actually where the sonar array is put into place. But it also has a dual purpose. This bulbous bow is something that's been invented in the modern day. And what happens is, when normal vessels going along the water, you have these waves that ripple against the hull of the ship, and that causes more drag. And this bulbous thing that they put at the front of the vessel actually reduces the amount of wave action going on at the side of the ship. This is a super layman's terms way of explaining this, but what it does is it improves the fuel efficiency. It has to be specifically designed for the ship, but it does its purpose pretty well. And it has, of course, having the sonar array put into place, so it has dual purposes. But other than that, you can see lots of photo etch being put into place. So this Academy model kit came with photo etch, so that's where a lot of these really tiny pieces come from. Oftentimes what you'll do is you'll bend them to shape, dry foot them, and then glue them into place with some CA glue.
So tell me about the deck. How did you do the coloring on the deck?
So this is kind of my standard procedure for a lot of my models. I will paint them with a base color and then go in with some oil paints to get some kind of a sun-bleached appearance. And so I'd put a white oil on top of this gray color that I painted. Actually, it was to me, it was NATO black. And after kind of splotching it onto the surface, you kind of get the sun bleached effect, because I think I'm not sure, but I think it's actually kind of like an asphalt material on the top of the deck. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So it kind of looks like an old road that you're driving down, when you're just traveling. So I try to mimic that when making this model. So
how did you install the handrail around? I mean, it's so tiny.
Yeah. So for reference, when you're looking at this in a picture, it looks a lot bigger than what it is, but usually what you got to do is use tweezers, and you got to be real careful. You look at the thing wrong and it'll break. So you just got to take your time and put it into place, bend it carefully. Oftentimes what I'll use is the side of my X-Acto knife to do the rolling effect, which can help you kind of get a more even roll on the railings, especially when you have the bow where there's quite a significant curve going on there. So matching it takes a little time.
The little square area behind the gun, what is that?
So that is the main armament, or where the main armaments are held. So nowadays you have what's called the vertical launch systems. And so it's just a bunch of silos for missiles. You have various different kinds of missiles you can put in place. You can have usually what's called the standard missiles, which can carry out almost anything that you can think about. You know, ship-to-ship warfare, ship-to-air warfare, anti-submarine warfare. They even have like some torpedoes that are attached to rockets. But also you see the main gun in the front of the bow. And that's 128 millimeter, I'm pretty sure, and that also has a lot of different roles to play. You can see some decals I'm put down. I had a lot of mistakes when I put those down. I put them down incorrectly. You're supposed to have the top, the red circle go below the square when you're looking at this in the picture. And so I did that wrong. And then, you know, I was masking and it ripped off a portion of the decal, so I had to go paint it again. So that's why it looks a little messy there. But, you know, it's a learning experience and it's fun to build these things. So there you go. So we can move on to the midship now. So this is where a lot of the business is going on. You see in the front portion that you have the bridge section. And of course, this is where a lot of the different radar arrays are placed. So what's cool about this ship in general is that it has the Aegis combat system. And so what this does is it fuses a lot of the different radars, the sonar, and a lot of the different scanning arrays into one kind of area, the CIC, which allows for the ship's crew to kind of get a better understanding of the battle space. But furthermore, it can communicate this information with other vessels of the fleet so that you get, you know, more cohesive information coming into play. And so that's kind of what you see, those little white panels. Those are some of the radar arrays, the X-band radar arrays. And of course you see the mast being put into place, which is of course very tiny, very easy to break, and lots of these other little pieces here that are all around.
And what are those made of? They're very, very fine, almost looks like wire.
So yeah, it's brass. It's a part of the photo etch sheet. So you cut those out, put them into place, and of course, you know, you touch it, you'll bend it. You know, you sneeze in the wrong direction, it'll be destroyed. So further midship, you can see the exhaust sections where the exhausts from the pretty powerful engines of the vessel come out. Of course, you also have some harpoon missile launchers, kind of in the middle there, 2 4-packs. And then you've got the winch for deploying the rib boats, which I don't know if they're called rib boats or not, but the little vessels that they can launch and do, you know, anti-piracy.
Detail.
Yeah, they're tiny. It's a lot. It's a lot to look at. It takes a lot of patience doing this, and I mean, man, it's different from doing some armor modeling because it's just so tiny. Everything's so brittle. Further into the aft portion of the midsection, you can see, of course, the larger area for the vertical launch systems, and of course that's where the bulk of the main weaponry, the main weapon systems are stored. You also have some very fine torpedo launchers, which are of course for anti-submarine warfare and of course anti-ship warfare. So in the rear section of the ship, this is what makes this a Flight 2 vessel. It has 2 hangar bays for I think UH-60 Seahawks. I think that's their nomenclature. What this does is it gives it a major advantage on other vessels. So what that allows the ship to do is when they have 2 helicopters, they can essentially scan the area around the clock with these 2 helicopters. One can be, you know, 500 miles out doing some patrolling, and then when it comes back, the second one can be sent out. So around the clock stuff can be happening there. You also see, you know, now we're to the bow portion of the vessel. You can see the propellers and of course the rudders put into place there. So lots of detail. It's a real fun ship to build. This has always been one of my most favorite ships. But of course, you know, you can see a lot of small little decals being put into place. Those were
Do you use microsol when you put these?
Yeah, I use microsol. I've heard microset is actually a better product, but microsol's done the job. And I don't even use a layer of microsol on first. Put the decal on, and then I'll put another layer on. And essentially, you just let it dry. It'll wrinkle up. That's okay. That's just kind of the process. Once it dries, you put another layer on, and then you just put as many layers on until you feel like it's on there pretty well.
So do you use any of this pledge stuff?
Yeah, I have some of it, and it does work well as a clear coat. But usually pledge, what's cool about it is you can get a pretty high gloss with it. So if you spray on a few layers, it does work well with an airbrush, by the way. If you spray on a few layers, you can kind of get a satin finish, but if you keep spraying them on, you can get a thicker coat and bring it up to a high shine. So if that's, didn't think it needed that, I didn't want to mess with the kind of matte finish. When you have something that's very small scale, glossiness can ruin the scale of a model. So I try to be real careful with that. And I don't actually have a matte finish
I tell you what,
right now, so.
Landon, this is a beautiful model. Thanks for sharing it.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it and talking about it.